Hey, Dr. Mike here. Healthy arteries equal stable plaques. Stick around to learn more about the connection with our returning guest, Dr. Fred Pescatore.
You're listening to Live Foreverish, a show dedicated to helping you live just a little longer. Here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Crystal Gossard.
All right, welcome to Live Foreverish. Today, we're really excited to have Dr. Fred Pescatore back on the show. Dr. Pescatore is a New York City physician and internist, specializes in nutritional medicine. He is globally renowned for being a healthy living expert, really. And he's a best-selling author of The Hamptons Diet and the A-List Diet. He has worked closely with the botanical pine bark extract pycnogenol for over 10 years after recommending it in one of his books, The Allergy and Asthma Cure. Dr. Pescatore, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure to be here.
You know, we've talked a lot about pine bark extract, and there's another ingredient we're going to talk about a little bit later because there's some interesting research, right, with these two combined. So that was a little teaser for people to hang in there, Dr. Crystal. But we've talked about whole body benefit of pycnogenol with you several times. I don't even know how many times you've been on the show now. Like 2 or 3?
This is your third time from what
Wow.
I can remember.
That'll be good. This will be a good one.
Yes, and when you were here last year, you were talking about hair loss.
Oh, that's right.
And pycnogenol.
That's what it was.
The new research with hair loss. And
well, in today's show, we want to focus more on the cardiovascular system. February is Valentine's, Heart Month, all that kind of stuff, right? Take care of your heart, Dr. Crystal. And so we want to talk about the role that pine bark extract and one called Gotu-Kola can play in protecting our arteries and keep them flowing. And so before we do that, though, I'd like to hear your take on how you explain to your patients how plaques form and their connection to the lining of the artery called the endothelium. How do you explain the importance of the endothelium in plaque formation to your patients?
Sure. I think it can be explained pretty easily. So what happens is, we have arterial cell walls, right? So what happens, something comes along we get oxidative stress. Oxidative stress causes damage to that arterial cell wall. When there's damage to that arterial cell wall, we have something called LDL cholesterol that comes along and sort of tries to repave that arterial cell wall to make it nice and so that the blood can flow through it. So you have to think of our arteries as a plumbing system, right? So when the LDL cholesterol comes along to try to heal the endothelial damage, the oxidative stress that occurs, it comes and forms layers upon layers. And after repeated oxidative stress to that cell wall, that's when you'll start to see those plaques form. Because it's just, think about you're just paving over something. You're repaving, and it just gets bigger and bigger until sometimes you get what we call clot formation or clogs or arteriosclerosis plaques or whatever you'd like to call it today.
Yeah, I am so happy that you brought out that point about the LDL cholesterol coming to repair. Most people I think we forget that cholesterol is a part of your cell membranes. It's how it's used to repair injury all over the body.
Yeah.
And somehow it's become the bad guy. And I'm not saying that the LDL is not something that we should keep an eye on as it relates to atherosclerosis and heart disease. But I love that you brought out it's the injury to the arteries. That's where homocysteine comes in. That's a side note.
That's a side
Another
note.
show that can damage the arterial
a lot of the risk factors for heart disease, and I think Dr. Pescatore, you would agree, whether it's oxidative stress, inflammation,
blood pressure, high blood pressure, damaging the artery,
glycation. I mean, it goes on. There's a whole list of things. It's damaging. It's damaging that the endothelium, and as Dr. Pescatore just said, LDL cholesterol is trying to repair that.
Right.
And it just keeps happening.
Well, because we're always under so much oxidative stress through our diets, our environment, everything, I think that repair mechanism is getting a bad name. It's getting the bad rap for what it really is, because it is trying to help us.
Right.
It is. And it's the oxidative stress and the chronic inflammation. And that's kind of where these, the nutrients that we'll talk about today will come to play, because they're helping to manage that process as antioxidants and as nutrients that can manage inflammation. And that kind of brings us to this idea of stable plaque versus plaques that are unstable or inflamed.
More prone to rupture.
Can you tell us about that? About what is a stable plaque?
Yeah.
Well, a stable plaque is one that is sort of, all right, we can think of plaques as two ways, or one way, right? So you have a plaque and there's sort of fat fiber stuff in the middle of it. So an unstable plaque has something that's really thin, it has a thin coating, so that it can break free. Things inside the clot can break free, causing thrombi, causing strokes, causing heart attacks, causing clots. A stable plaque, on the other hand, has that fat mass in the center, but it's got a nice web of collagen around it, holding it in place. So willing that it doesn't get, bigger and that it doesn't explode into the whole circulatory system, causing strokes and heart attacks and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So could you describe it as almost like that the more stable plaques, the body has kind of done just a really good job of kind of containing the process?
Yes. Yeah. I like where you're going, because
sealing it.
I don't think the issue is, decreasing plaque burden, although that might be a goal in research right now. We have to accept that most of us have plaques. I mean, they develop young, right? I mean, what are they called? White streaks or something in kids and teenagers or something like that. I mean, so we all have them, and the older we get my age group, I have probably a few. And Dr. Pescatore, would you agree that it's really what I want to do is I want to make sure they don't rupture. I want to make sure they're stable, and I think there's some nutrients that we can take to help with that.
Yeah, I mean, we learned during the Vietnam War when these kids were coming back that they had arterial plaque, right? So that's not a surprise. We've known that since the 1970s. So is that 60 years ago or something? I don't know, 50 years ago. So we know that, but you're right. So we want to keep the stable plaques from getting bigger. And we want to keep the unstable plaques from rupturing. So that's really, I think, perfect. Well said. Thank you. Yeah. That's what we want to happen.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's get into this, Dr. Crystal, because I know you really like this research.
I do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, heart disease is the number one killer. It has been since we have been tracking what's killing Americans.
It's frustrating, Dr. Pescatore, because the amount of research money that we've put into preventing, primary cardiovascular risk, secondary prevention, all that kind of stuff. We haven't done that great. I mean, it's still our number one killer across all different disease states, right?
Well, because despite what we do, or despite what we ask people to do, people don't follow advice, right? So it's really stacked against us as a population as a whole. It's stacked against us to be able to combat this. So with lifestyle changes, with diet, exercise, proper nutrition, nutritional supplements. So we really, I think, at least I think of my role more as helping people manage what is around them, including things that they already have formed, as opposed to say, here's how you should be the ideal person in this not ideal world.
Yeah.
That's asking a lot of the patient, isn't it? And all of us.
It really is. I mean, we can ask because that's our job, I think, is to tell people how to be perfect. But it's really hard in this imperfect world.
But at the same time, when we're telling the patients how to be perfect, we're not perfect. we're not able to do it.
Speak for yourself.
Let's get into the research, Dr. Crystal.
Yeah, so this whole show is focusing on two unique nutrients: Gotu kola and French maritime pine bark. And I'm excited because I think there are at least, we were talking about this before the show, at least about 14 clinical trials.
Is that what that?
Yes, okay, with the combination of these nutrients. And I just want you to kind of give us some highlights, star information from some of these studies. But first, I think we should describe what these nutrients are, and we can start with the pine bark and what's making it unique.
All right. Well, it's a French maritime pine tree bark specifically. And it's a natural antioxidant. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. It works on natural anti-inflammatory, works on collagen, has a beneficial impact on endothelial health, which is why it helps to improve blood flow. And I think it dovetails beautifully. Well, before I get to how it dovetails beautifully with Gotu Kola, is that, this French maritime pine tree bark extract, pycnogenol specifically, does have 40 years of research talking about it. Over 160 clinical studies, more than 12,000 patients have been in these studies and trials. So I think it's a really powerful ingredient, which I love talking about. But it dovetails beautifully with Gotu Kola because Gotu Kola also has anti-inflammatory properties, has antioxidant properties. And Gotu Kola has been used, as has French maritime pine tree bark extract, has been used for hundreds of years in helping people to get well. So I think if you just take it down to what these two ingredients can do, you can see how they can work beautifully together in the cardiovascular system, because our cardiovascular system is made up of collagen. It's made up of the endothelium. Inflammation we talked about before causes these plaques that we've been talking about. So the fact that they were able to combine these two, and Dr. Crystal, like you said, 14 studies talking about the combination of the two. So if you look at the French maritime pine tree bark extract, there's over 30 clinical studies just on its benefits for cardiovascular health, how it improves endothelial function and blood flow, helps decrease obesity, helps decrease high blood pressure, helps decrease borderline high blood sugar, hyperlipidemia. And then, it goes on and on and on. Every aspect of cardiovascular health, we have a study that can talk about that pycnogenol, French maritime pine tree bark extract, has a study that can talk to that. And these are recent studies. These weren't studies done 100 years ago. These were done very, very recently.
And these are all clinical trials, correct, in humans?
Yes, in human clinical trials. I'm not even talking about the investigational animal studies. These are just human trials.
So when you combine, so that's, and we've known that you've been on the show talking about pycnogenol a couple of times. So we know the benefit of that. So, but when you say it combines well with Gotu Kola, what does that mean? What kind of results are you now seeing? If pycnogenol was doing such a great job, why do I got to add something else to it?
I'll tell you why. Beautiful question. Because clinical studies have shown the combination helps reduce the rate of plaque progression by up to 95%, which is enormous. Could you imagine if a drug was able to do this?
There is no drug that does that, for sure.
But if it were, it would be on every newscast, every magazine cover. It would push Ozempic out of the front pages.
Right.
But you're asking me a bit about the specifics. The ingredient combination, Gotu Kola and French maritime pine tree bark extract, prevented the progression of atherosclerotic plaque, which is what we talked about at the beginning. It improved arterial plaque stability, which is what we want to have happen. We don't want those plaques to rupture. It was able to decrease the number and the size of arterial plaques, which again, we talked about as being really key to all of this cardiovascular disease stuff. And it decreased oxidative stress. Decreasing oxidative stress goes right to the heart of the problem, which you then won't get endothelial dysfunction without oxidative stress.
So we just checked off all the boxes.
Okay, so I just want to pause, and there are a couple of things that just stand out to me. One, and I was not aware of the 90-something%. I thought I had a good understanding of that research. So that is outstanding data. But we're seeing that, from my understanding, I know in a few of the studies, everyone in the study have plaque, like asymptomatic atherosclerosis, and it's decreasing the progression. So you can expect if you have a plaque, it's going to slowly build up
in the standard way we live. Yes,
right. So when you're saying it's decreasing the progression, and just correct me, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying correctly. When you compare the groups that took the combination versus the groups that did not, their plaques progressed worse. They were worse. And in the group with the combination, their plaques may have gotten worse, but not as they didn't progress as
at the rate that you would expect. Right.
So that piece I think is important to point out. But the point with the size and the number, does that translate to us saying that it's getting rid of the plaque, not just slowing down progression, but if you have plaque there, it's removing plaque?
I don't know if that's what it's saying. We got the expert here.
That's what I'm asking.
I don't know if I could say such a thing, but it's shown to be beneficial in reducing the fast progression, right? So if you look at some of these studies, and the studies lasted about 2.5 years, there was a 3.5-year follow-up to this study. So compared to the control group, we're always talking about compared to the control group, right? So control group had a 12% progression, right? And in the 3.5 follow-up study, the risk of subclinical, meaning you're not feeling anything, arterial plaque progressed to severe clinical stages where you are actually feeling something, was shown to be reduced by 86%. Okay. So, and I find, what another interesting thing I find that really I don't think they're talking enough about with this study is that during the whole study period, 16% of the subjects in the control group suffered from a cardiovascular event, like strokes, heart attacks, but only 4% in the group that were taking the French maritime pine tree bark extract and the Gotu-Kola combination had such a thing.
I'm glad you just said that, because at the end of the day, people may hear something like plaque, regression or a slowing of plaque progression or something like that. What does that ultimately mean to me? Like, what is that? Like, what's the take-home message? The take-home message is reduce risk. You're reducing your risk for a coronary event, and that's kind of the whole goal of this, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to do. So that's the translation, I think, for the everyday person.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right there, because that drives home the point of what you'll feel clinically. Yes, we can look at, as scientists, you and I like to look at, why did this happen? How did this happen? How much did this happen? Did it decrease the thickness of the cell wall and the intima and the media and all these things we like to talk about and learn about? Yeah. What does it mean to me as Joe Schmo down the block? Like, I might get less of a heart attack risk. Yay!
Yeah, that's all that's what they want to hear.
You're right.
That's what they want to hear. What does all that mean? That's where we have to be translators and good educators. Yeah, yeah. How long was that study with the
initial study was 2.5 years? That's where they did the high resolution ultrasound, all of that, to find out about the progression of the plaques. And then the follow-up study about the clinical part was 3.5 years.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and that's that is something that's important for people to understand. You need to be dedicated to this and committed to taking this kind of supplement on a daily basis. And if you are already at risk, or you've already had an event, you're already doing all your conventional things, boy, I would definitely practice integrative medicine here. I would add this easily.
So tell us about the dosing.
The dosing. Most of the doses of the pycnogenol were done with 100 milligrams, 100 milligram dose. The Gotu-Kola dose, I'm not sure, because it was done in a combination product. So actually don't know what I apologize for that. I don't know what the actual Gotu-Kola dose was.
We can find that. We can post it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. That'd be great. Sorry. Don't mean to be. I'm not the expert today about that.
You're fine. And you can't know. See, Dr. Pescatore, you're not perfect.
See,
You see?
I knew it would get back to that.
Back to that. So let's talk about, I think these are great. Are there any other nutrients that you suggest in your practice just for overall arterial health?
Sure, but if I may, Dr. Crystal, just mention one other thing about real human experience. So let's say you've had a stent put in, and a lot of people have had cardiac stenting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they also studied patients who underwent stent surgery, and supplementation with the French maritime pine tree bark extract and gotu kola prevented progression even in that situation.
That's such a good point. Many people think, okay, I got my stent and I'm good to go.
No,
you're not.
That stent. I listen. I don't care what anybody says. Because as a radiologist, I saw this. Stents love to get inflamed. They do, and so that's why there's occlusion rates and re-occlusion rate. I mean, that's why people go in multiple times if they're surviving. Mm-hmm. They're going to go in multiple times to have that stent opened up.
I mean, I've had one patient that actually had a stent. The next day he had angina again, and the stent was completely clogged.
The next day?
Yeah, you would hope it lasts a little longer than that, but
I was shocked. I was shocked. He was shocked with his whole medical team was shocked, but I couldn't believe that. But anyway, back to other things that I like. I like fish oil. You guys must like fish oil, right?
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, fish oil is great. Despite how they don't want us to like fish oil.
I know. And what dose are you suggesting for your patients?
I like 1,500 to 3,000 milligrams of the EPA DHA part. I think that's where a lot of the studies did their work with 1,500 milligrams of EPA DHA. This is an important point. I'm sure you tell your listeners this all the time. Don't just see what it says on the label. 3,000 milligrams of fish oil. You've got to look at how much.
Look at the back. Yep.
Yep. You got to look at the back. I love vitamin D. I think vitamin D, looks at pretty much everything, but I think there are a bunch of studies out on vitamin D and cardiovascular health. So I think those are definitely my first two. I love CoQ10. What is our heart muscle without CoQ10, right? So I think those are my three favorites. What about you guys?
You nailed my fab. That's, CoQ10, D,
vitamin K.
Vitamin K, omegas. Those are just foundational for me. I mean, those are everyday stuff. Yeah. And for me, the mention of the vitamin D, there are several studies showing an association of low vitamin D and cardiovascular risk. And even with the omegas in your bloodstream, the lower the amount of omega-3s, higher cardiovascular risk. Yeah.
So, vitamin K is top of my list. It helps to get that calcium where it should be. Out of the arteries into the bones. I also like pomegranate. That's another one that I like for arterial health.
Yeah.
Olive.
This is fantastic.
Olive is good as well. Yeah. There's lots of things.
There's a lot of good things. And that's the problem is getting people to do more of the good things and not so much of the bad things. Right? I mean, that's where the smoking and the sugar and the stress and just helping people to really and to provide people true plans and strategies for those things. I think patients, Dr. Pescatore, and I don't know if you agree with me. Let me give you an example. Doctors for decades have been saying things like, "Well, you need to eat better and exercise," and that's it. Right. They don't. What does that mean? Like, how do I do that? Can you help me? Well, I don't know. Just eat better. I mean, it's like. We need to do a better job. Yeah.
Don't eat fat today. Don't eat sugar tomorrow. It's all over the place. The information is all over the place. So I don't blame patients for losing, not faith, but losing their ability to. I mean, they're just. I'm confused. We're confused.
It's confusing. It's overwhelming, and I think a lot of people just finally say, "Well, just give me my statin, give me my calcium channel blocker. Let me just." Not worry about it. But as you said, you can't do that, Dr. Crystal.
Yeah, but what I love about integrative medicine as well is that maybe you are on a stat, but maybe it's a low dose, and then you can add in something like
That's
a
the beauty of
pine
integrative
bark
medicine. Yeah.
and the go-to cola, and then you can come at it from different angles.
Love
Right.
it. Dr.
Yeah.
Pescatori, how can our followers kind of follow you, learn more about you? Do you have a website or what we like to call social media handles?
I have it
Is that how
all.
you say it?
There'd be drpescatori.com is my website. You can sign up for my newsletter. You get 4 times a week for free. It comes into your mailbox every morning. Social, I think, is all Dr. Fred. Yeah, I have a cooking show to teach people how to cook.
I saw
cooking-
that.
Ooh, wait, I love watching cook. That's what I do.
He has nice. I loved. Oh goodness, the one that. Oh, your deviled eggs.
That was recent. You do watch it. That's great.
I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I love. I don't know what it is. I'm obsessed with watching people cook.
You should watch them. Good meal options.
That's good. All right. Well, Dr. Pescatori, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, you guys. Always a pleasure. Always a fun time.
Don't forget, you can go to liveforeverish.com where you can download several other episodes, well over 400 now. When you do, please like, share, comment, and subscribe so you never miss a show. We post every Monday and Wednesday, Doctor. Every Monday and Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good.
For a long time.
That's right.
Over 5 years.
Liveforeverish.com. It's been over 5 years. It has, yeah. And then also our sponsor, Life Extension. Because you guys are so awesome. If you go to lifeextension.com, buy whatever you want to buy. And when you're at the cart, put in the discount code podcast. Should I say it slower?
Say it slow so they know what you're saying. Podcast.
Podcast. Just type that in, and you're going to get 10% off over $50 or more, plus free shipping and handling. That's at lifeextension.com. I want to thank everybody for listening. I'm Dr. Mike, and that is
Dr. Crystal.
All right, we'll see you next time.